Okay.
What up, Seeker Knowledge family, man? I'm back once again with another inspirational. Hold on. I guess my guest, he hold on for the add him back to the screen. I don't know what happened, but here you go. He's back. But once again, sorry about that, y'all. But this guest
Yeah.
right here, very amazing, brother. Like I met him at the gala in Montreal, Canada, where I won my award for best podcast. And I heard this brother speak. I was like, wow, this brother amazing. I gotta bring him on the podcast, like, cause he got a story to share. And I'm gonna let him get us in there. Then it's like when I went up there and gave my little speech, bro, it's like we connected energy, we connected instantly. So thank you once again, Mr. David, for coming on here. Like, how are you doing?
I'm blessed and doing my best. How about you, man?
Man, I'm great, man. Today has been an amazing day. Like I'm getting my book worked on, man. I'm turning my podcast book I'm publishing into an audio book. So actually, I'm
Nice.
dropping 2 books this year.
Nice. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Appreciate it. But I titled this "Who is Mr. David Archer?" because everybody read the bio on my social media platforms, but they don't know who Mr. David Archer is. They don't know your story on how you became Mr. David Archer. Because whatever you want to share, bro, you
Sure.
got the floor. Let me be quiet, y'all. I'm gonna be quiet and drink my tea.
No, no. Look, this is a conversation, so I'm gonna say what I'm called on to say, but I want to also say like thank you so much for the opportunity of being able to uh, share this frequency with your listeners. So I'll just start off from way back in the beginning. So I'm going to start from even before I was born. Is
Go
that
ahead.
because this is Black History Month, it's very important for us to know that Black history didn't start with our enslavement. It didn't start with what happened to our ancestors. Black history started. I see in the background that you have the
Oh yeah.
Egyptian figure there. So I'm very fond of like ancient Kemet, the name that was given before Greeks called it Egypt.
Come
And
on now. I follow
you
the
know what I
42
mean?
laws of Maya.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is what I'm saying is that we got to start from way back, right? So for me, it was really important for me to know, like, raised in Montreal, Canada. Um, like it's like I was raised in a context where it was clear that I was a Black person and I was not a white person, and it was clear that I was speaking English and the language you're supposed to speak here is French. So from a young age, I had no choice but to be understanding or have an awareness of what it meant to be like someone like myself. From a young age, I knew that there was something wrong with the way how the media was portraying Black people versus how it was portraying white people. And when I was old enough, because Martin Luther King Day is not a federal holiday over here. And I remember one of the earliest like school presentations that I did in English class, you had to dress up like a historical figure. So I took that as an opportunity to dress up like Malcolm X. And so I gave like a speech and all this. This is in grade 7, right? And I remember later that year asking the teacher, why is it that there's no Martin Luther King Day like here, why we don't have the day off or anything? And I remember she told me that it's because we don't have racism like how the Americans do. And I knew at that time that she was forcing me to intentionally misremember who MLK was and to misremember what history actually was. So as I got older, well, in high school, I remember being told that my grades weren't as good as other people's and told that I'd never set foot in a university. Of course, because that's just the way how it goes when you're a young Black man.
Look at you now, though.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Now that they can't keep me out of these institutions now. So, but like the thing is, but back then that really affected me. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go into school out of spite. They told me that you can't go into computer science, and I was like saying, okay, well, I'm gonna do it because I'm a polarity responder. If you say north, then I'm gonna say south. And so in this case, I did a computer science degree, was working in the field for quite a bit of time. And while I was programming, doing some back end database code for this small little company. At the same time, I realized that the accumulation of these comments about what Blackness was instilled within me a imposter syndrome and even a belief that I shouldn't do any public speaking or any of this stuff. So I was kind of shy back in the day. And so while I was programming, I was listening to these audio tapes of people who were able to use their voice to change the way how people feel. It was called like these, like, it was like self-hypnosis, like motivational speeches and how to believe in yourself and all this stuff. So I was in one earbud, I'm listening to this, and the other, like, I'm on my keyboard, just like kind of like coding this stuff. So anyways, all of that just to say is that understanding that it's possible for us to use our voice to create change, understanding that we can use code to create change, made it so that I got into a bachelor's of psychology. I did a master's of social work. I did a master's in marriage and family therapy. I'm a psychotherapist. I've written 5 books on the topic of anti-racist psychotherapy and racial trauma and how to get people to heal, because I want to make it so that the next generation doesn't have as hard a time as I did. And I know, because we've spoken and I've listened to, I just finished listening to one of the episodes that you had for your podcast. I know that for you've also been through a lot of difficulties and a lot of challenges. And what I feel is important for us who have these platforms and who have these opportunities to be able to reach the people is to let everybody know that that they have an inherent dignity and that they have an inherent worth, and that regardless of what other people have told you, to remember that your ancestors were great people. Even if your ancestors weren't kings and queens and had fancy titles, we have common ancestors that did the best that they could to make it so we have this conversation today. So I want people to just know that your life is worth. Your life is full of worth. And there was someone that you will never meet in your past who was very far away from you now, but maybe close to you spiritually, who is there to remind you that you have a purpose in your life.
I love that. Like, everything you shared has been amazing, because, like, for us ancestors, I just told my wife, like, what if my ancestors, they came before me, would have jumped off the boat, or they wouldn't make it? I wouldn't have been here. So I'm grateful for all my ancestors that came before me, that instilled in me, like, because our ancestors came before you, their knowledge is inside of you. Like, you wonder where them thoughts, I be wondering where, like, I do my podcast, Mr. Archer, and I don't script anything. Everything come out of my conscious, and I just be sitting there like, where do these downloads come from?
Yes.
But I know where it came from. And, like, far as I can relate, you were saying, like, I didn't fit in. Like, people like, you're not going to fit in. Like, you're not going to be nobody. Because I was shy growing up. I was so shy growing up. I'm still is kind of shy, but I'm not. I came out of that shell. But people was like, you're not going to be nothing in life. You're too shy. You can't speak. Like, and it was so crazy. I had a speech problem growing up. Like, people couldn't hear me. Like, I had a speech problem, but I was like, I'm not going to let this defy. I'm like, this is not me. I'm not going to let that title stick to me. And that's why I really started my podcast, just to be that voice to encourage people, because people go through so much in life and they can't bounce back, and they look at that like, oh, that's who I am. No, that's just who you was. You had to go through it to come to where you at now. But nah, you got the flow, bro. Anything like, so I know you a psychotherapist. I never heard of that before until I heard you speak. Like, and I know you train other therapies to do that. Like, what made you get in that field? Like, how did that come about? Like, cause then the story you shared about how the neo-Nazi spit up, like, man, I want to let the world know what you overcame, Mr. David Archer.
Yeah, so let me talk a bit about that speech that I gave, which was amazing. Will Baptiste and his
shout out to Will, man.
Yeah, Will to Rise, man. Will to Rise, like, much respect. And so, like, what happened was, the reason why he's giving that speech is because Will contacted me, and I contacted him. I knew that he was doing some great things in Montreal, and he wanted to speak to me. He heard about, like, the work that I was doing of doing anti-racist psychotherapy.
I like
So
that.
then he gave me the opportunity to go on the mic. And if you give me a mic, I'm gonna talk. Because the same thing is that, yeah, I had the shyness as well, but I also like to deal. I was trying so hard to be able to find ways of being able to heal from my shyness. So I
Mhm.
also like made hip hop music. And so like for 10 years I was doing like shows in like in like
Yeah,
the
that's funny,
the
cause
the local church in the in the basement of the church in my town. We're in this small town. It was like outside of Montreal. It's called Chateauguay. And so like in Montreal, then we'd go to like these like bars and these clubs, and we just have a microphone and let's yell at the audience. And so that was a good way of helping to increase my confidence and being able to speak. Um,
mm,
but like what happened is, as I said, that theme of like the spoken word and its utility of making it so that your words can have an effect. It can have an effect not just on you in terms of positive affirmations you speak about yourself, but if you prepare 16 bars and it's like set up to like a decent melody and all that, then you're also able to light up the crowd, and the crowd also feels good as well. So
mhm,
I was doing a lot of hip hop music while I was in my bachelor's of psychology. And like while I was studying psychology, I was just interested in how um, the it's like what we come equipped with in our world is not in our lives is not like a permanent thing. And also like if a person gets a diagnosis or a mental health uh, diagnosis, that's not like a condemnation. That's not like a permanent way that they're going to be. And I've just, because I was able to help myself with my own confidence and my ability to speak to people, I figured, well, hey, there must be other ways of being able to help other things that people thought were permanent as well. And so that's what led me into doing social work. Studying social work, they gave me the language, just the language to be able to understand that race and that culture and that these social identities that we get, that they cause certain things to happen to certain people that don't happen to other people in terms of racial trauma. In
mhm,
the African Americans, they got the redlining in the history, like the Jim Crow laws and all these things. It's not because we were black why we were subjected to these things. It's because people were insecure about their whiteness. The problems that we had were not our problems. It was the consequences of other people having problems with their own identities and having fears of competition and all these things and all that stuff. So, anyways,
nah,
as
this
I
good.
started to, sorry, go
I
ahead.
said, nah, this good. Keep
All
going,
right,
man. This
yeah,
good.
yeah. So the thing is, I graduated with my psychology degree, my master's of social work. I worked for 5 years in an indigenous community as an addictions counselor, and so I started to
Mhm,
speak to people who had substance use disorders, and I realized that when I was helping people in the indigenous communities, it wasn't just stopping them from drinking. It wasn't just stopping them from using the opiates or any of that. It was also helping them to reclaim pride about themselves as an indigenous person, of people being able to say like with their full chest that I'm a good Indian, or that I'm proud to be myself. And so I noticed that as I helped people with these issues, it was impossible for me to separate their identity and their culture from the mental health stressor. And when I asked them about their culture, it seemed to help them to be able to get a little bit better. It started to increase
mhm,
trust. It started to increase that they could be their full selves in the sessions. And so then, as I started to do that, I wanted to think deeply about the impact of systems. So I started to study marriage and family therapy, understanding that
mhm,
family systems play a role, but social systems play a role. And that's what led me to
mhm.
doing private practice, doing my own business, and developing a way that's meant to eliminate the mental health consequences of racial trauma. So I'm trying to keep it a short story, but again, this is decades that I've been doing this. I have 15 plus years experience
No, whatever you
helping
want
people.
to,
Yeah.
whatever, I ain't gonna cut you off. Whatever you want to share within this hour, you can, cause like you, man, then you got 5 books out there. Then anti-racist, anti mean you against that. You don't, and like I heard your story when you told. I want you to get into how the neo-Nazi spit on you.
Oh, for real, for real, for real. Yeah, my mistake, my mistake.
No, you
Well, that
good.
was,
Before you share that, I can relate because I remember growing up where I'm from. Like it was still racism there, and I used to walk in certain neighborhoods, and Caucasian people used to pull guns on me, talking about you don't belong here. So I
Right.
know how it is to be stereotyped just because they see your skin color or your hair or your tattoos. They think everybody. That don't get me wrong. I had a past. I was a gangbanger, but once I changed, people still see you in that light. So I
Yeah.
can relate to being stereotyped or
For
dealing
real.
with racism. But man, your story, man, share your story. Like, how, man, that was powerful.
Yeah. So what I sang in that speech was just that I had told the audience that it's an honor for me to be here, but I'm not supposed to be here because there's so many experiences that I had in my life where there were people who would have preferred that I never use my voice for for therapy or much less anything else. And so the earliest trauma history event that I speak about in anti-racist psychotherapy in my first book was being spat on by a neo-Nazi while I was riding on my tricycle, and he would have wanted me to believe that I had no place being outside. This is different from having a gun pulled on you. Like I didn't have that experience in Chateauguay. I didn't experience that type of thing. But it's just that in the early 1990s, Montreal was a hub for like a resurgence of neo Nazis and people that were on the far right. And now we see it in the political spectrum. It's a little bit bigger now. It's clear that there's some fascist elements that are there that are not pro-black. Okay, and they find, and they're not pro-life. They're not really interested in people living good lives. It's more about stress, and it's more about division, and it's more about who's more powerful than one another. During
Mm-hmm.
my adolescence, as I said, is that growing up, it was a little challenging because, um, it's just the I was led to believe that I wasn't intelligent because I was getting marked down lower than other people that were around me. And but if I'm not intelligent, where did all these books come from? Like where did these degrees come from?
Exactly.
And it's really by the grace of my mother. My mother is a proud, if you know any Jamaicans, just know that us Jamaicans, we have a lot of pride in who we
People
are
think
and where
I'm
we,
Jamaican and Haitian, but I'm from the States. But everywhere I go, are you Jamaican? Are you
yeah,
Haitian? But how I look at it, my ancestors could have a root
for
ties
real.
in there. But everybody think I'm Jamaican. But because you know what, like it's crazy. But I connect with a lot of, I don't like call y'all foreigners because we're all alike. But I connect
Yeah.
with a lot of people that's outside of the states.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, as I was saying, is that we never know. Maybe like our ancestors, like my family is probably taken from the same part of Africa that your ancestors were from. But that's why, again, my job as an anti-racist is to make it so that even white people remember that their earliest ancestor, mitochondrial Eve, was a black African woman. Um, Eve, the first woman, wasn't in any cold European country. That's not the way how it started.
Big.
Like the most amount of like biological diversity is in Africa. That's where we started. And I really do think that that's a part of the fear that is within the white insecurity structure, is that they don't want to acknowledge that we all have a common ancestor, or that racial diversification came from Africa. It wasn't something they created, something that happened within that continent. So again, for me, I was a teenager, like learning this on my own before internet was like really big and all this stuff. So like, if anyone in your audience can imagine not having Google, okay. But the thing is that so I had to just like navigate this through my own. And again, I'm glad that my mother was able to like cook us like some oxtail, rice and peas, and curry goat, and like good
Oh,
cultural
okay.
food. And also because she was able to make it so, and my father too was playing like reggae music every Saturday morning with big speakers that were as big as my whole body. And so like you
You know,
had
like,
no
I
choice.
like Bob Marley though. I like a certain look of
Yeah,
Jamaican music, like Bob Marley song. I like one of my main songs I like by him is the Three Little Birds. Every little thing, it's gonna be all right.
yeah,
Don't
yeah, yeah,
worry. When I hear that
yeah,
song, it's just like I come in peace and let me know no matter what I'm going through, no matter what just happened a minute ago, no matter what just happened yesterday. That song just brings me a peace. So I love like cultural music. Now go ahead, Mr. Orchard, you got it. Just
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to share that.
And also just to know for Bob Marley, I mean, that's why in Jamaica we say we lickle, but we talawa. Because the thing is, even though it's such a small island, it has such a big influence. And
Mhm.
I went to France just like in the summer, and they know about Bob Marley. I know one of my friends, he's from
Mhm.
Morocco, and he said, yeah, they know about Bob Marley. And Bob Marley, one of the greatest things about him is that just know that he also carried like a counterculture, like a revolutionary message of like trying to
Oh
bring up
yeah.
Rastafarianism and all of these things. So even though his music,
Mhm.
there's a lot of nice songs that are there, he was also like anti-imperialist, and he is against all of that terrible stuff that sometimes can
Mhm.
be very popular and all vogue right now.
Oh
But
yeah, I already
the good
know.
thing, yeah, the good thing about being able to know where you come from and to know that you have a culture is that it helps to protect against the idea of being a figment of a white person's imagination. If you're able to
Mhm.
believe that you have a way of knowing, or even like a way of speaking, it's like it adds value to yourself, and then you don't have to fall into the stereotypes of what other people think or expect of you. There's an Africana studies professor. He's really a Jegna, a master of our time, master teacher of our times, named Dr. Greg Carr. And he's like, I feel that during the 2020, when we were all locked in, it was super helpful for me to, even though I was in the state where I wasn't connected to like other people physically, or even like in a community way, he was a key person that helped me to just know that as people of African descent, that there's a rich history that we are a part of. And since then, and even before, because I read this book called "The Destruction of Black Civilization" by Chancellor Williams when I was like a teenager. One of my uncles from Jamaica was like, "Take this book," and then I read it. I didn't know what would be in it, but that's the thing that kind of helped me to know that what happens to Black people is not by accident. These are strategies that have been in place for centuries. And so that's why we need to strategize as well for how we can get out of this mess. And that's because of my mother pouring into me, my family pouring into me. These are things that increase my racial consciousness, because of the drive for me to be able to heal myself, because I've met so many clients who've been able to turn their life trajectory around. I feel that it's incumbent on me. I feel that it's a purpose of mine to make it so that we train other people to also train other people, so that we can help to change the world.
Man, your story is like everything you shared is beautiful. None of I got my muted because they out there cutting grass. So
No
whatever
problem.
else you want to share, you can share the story about the neo-Nazi number, how he spit on you and felt like you didn't belong. You can get into that story. If you, man, whatever you want to share, like you got a lot of amazing accomplishment, and people need to know what you overcame. So keep shooting away, like you got the floor.
Sure. Well, the key thing is that it's like the experiences that we have in our past. Because in the podcast I was listening to you say before, I forget the term you were just talking about, but you're talking about to some degree that we have to acknowledge the things that have happened in our past, and that we don't have to shy away from these things, and we have to acknowledge them. And I do think it is true is that we have to know the painful parts of our experience. A lot of times, because painful things have happened, and in the episode you're talking about the fact you've been through divorce, you've been through like different challenges and all this. We have to come to terms with the challenges that have happened and know that they happened. And at the same time, we must be courageous enough to heal from them as well. Whenever bad things happen to us, there's a lesson that becomes ingrained with it as well. So let's say, for example, when I was younger, when I was bullied, there are people who would bully me to make it so that I would internalize a belief, as I said earlier, that your voice is not as important. Your body is not as good. Your skin color is not as good. All of these kinds of things. And so it's not only about the suffering. I feel that anytime, if I'm going to talk about what racial trauma is, we must also talk about racial trauma recovery. That's a key part that's usually missing. Um, Even if it is Black History Month, but this is really, as Dr. Greg Carr would say, this is the Blackest History Month, because every month is Black History. But it's really just for us to know that when we're talking about Black History Month, we need to know that yes, there was an interruption in our history related to the enslavement, but throughout the enslavement, we were resisting the whole time. This is why a lot of people were shipped over to Jamaica because they called us the unruly ones because we keep causing rebellions all of the time. And then you put too many of us unruly people on an island, we might just do something like go to Nova Scotia and liberate some people. We might just, and so it's really just to know that whenever we talk about the suffering, we must also talk about the utility of the suffering or the ability to transmute the suffering into wisdom as well. And so that's why a key part of what it is that got me to this point was the clients that I met. I remember when I was working as in an indigenous community as an addictions counselor. There was this one woman that I met. I'll just give her the name Kay. This is not her real name, but she was a person who taught me what complex trauma was before I even knew what complex trauma was. And so, even though on the paper, on the intake form, it said that she had a substance use disorder, when I met with her, it was clear she had much more than that. It was clear that there were personality disorder issues that were there. There was high levels of suicidality. She wanted to kill herself repeatedly, and she'd tell me and laugh about it. So I was like, okay, this seems a little bit more than my pay grade. So I had to get some extra training and I had to get some extra supervision. And as I learned more about trauma, I found this approach called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is called EMDR therapy. And EMDR is really helpful for treating what is called post traumatic stress disorder. But I'm saying all of this because in being able to help this person to overcome the stresses that she went through, it changed my life. It made it so that it was really like a validating experience of bringing it full circle of even though she almost tried to give up on her life multiple times through the suicidal attempts, even though she was numbing herself off to her experience because of the pain and the traumas that she had from her childhood through the alcohol use. This was a person who was eventually able to get sober. And so, as I said, the more that I'm helping people to be able to heal, the more that it's instilling within me just this desire to go on these platforms and let other people know that this is possible. The thing I want to add, though, is that we don't have enough Black men that are therapists. This is something that I see. So in Canada, to my knowledge at this moment, I'm the only Black male approved EMDR consultant in my country. And I think that this is a terrible thing. But part of the reason is because we have in our minds, in our culture, and I say culture, I mean in North American culture, Black men are not supposed to be therapists. We're not supposed to be healers. I'm glad that in you and I, in our generation, we can talk about vulnerability and stuff like that. We could talk about what things that have happened to us. But I really do believe that a cultural shift, there's a momentum for a cultural shift. And I do believe that as much as you're going to see that political conditions are going to make it so that people will feel a bit more pressured, people will be more willing to get like upset and aggressive and anger and all of these things. But we have to use that anger to heal as well. And that's a lot of when you're talking about me speaking about the trauma from my past. It's really just knowing that my anger was transmuted into wisdom. I was completely fed up with the idea that this is the only narrative of my people. I was fed up with the idea that this is all that the society is promising to me, of saying I just only need to be an entertainer. And so then I started to read, I started to study, and I started to have like this unrelenting ambition to make it so that I could find out how to help people to heal as effectively as possible. So using EMDR therapy, I got a lot of successes with it. Being certified in this approach, helping to train other therapists to be able to use it at a high level, I started to find out that while there were some amazing things with it, there were some knowledge gaps that were there. So I myself, I started to present at the international associations and started to speak about what racial trauma was. And so I started to speak about how there is this PTSD that's there, but there's also these extra elements that need to be understood as well. So PTSD, as I was speaking about, is when you're talking about an event that takes place. And it could be so destabilizing that it makes this association in a person's life and in their nervous system that they may orient their lives around it. So the person who's traumatized because of PTSD, they want to organize their lives so that they avoid triggers, or organize their lives so that that they don't have to be as hyper vigilant, and and they keep praying and praying that the same type of trigger won't continually happen to them. But I noticed working in Montreal with a lot of immigrant communities that there were also people who had racial trauma. And when we talk about racial trauma, these are experiences that relate to either real or perceived experiences of discrimination that become encoded in a person's mind in a similar kind of way. And so I wrote about racial trauma, I presented on it, and I saw three things that I hope will be helpful for your audience to know. For people to just understand, racial trauma is not just something that's in your head, it's also something that's in your body and in your nervous system. There are three important elements that I want to share with the audience. The first part is that in addition to being caused by real or perceived experiences, racial trauma also is multi generational. This means that there are epigenetic factors to racial trauma, which means that things that happened in the past, sometimes we can pass down these mental health vulnerabilities to subsequent generations. So we are not only dealing with our trauma, sometimes we are also needing to heal from the hypervigilance that great grandmother experienced while she was on the concentration camps in what we call plantations to make them sound nice. But these were places where you were just there to work to die. That's what they intended, but they still couldn't get rid of us. Second part is that not only is it based on the past, we are also experiencing stresses into our nervous system because of present day microaggressions. So we know, as you mentioned, is that having a gun pointed at you from, like, a white supremacist, of course, this is a traumatic experience. This is a stressful experience for me, being spat on by a neo-Nazi, like all of these things, okay? But there are even these things that don't involve the physical threat, but are still interpreted as a stress. When George Floyd was murdered by the police officers, and like, even though we didn't experience the murder and we weren't there, in our nervous systems we were feeling shook. Something was happening to us that was making it so that we were feeling stressed at that time. The accumulation of exposure to videos, street going through your smartphone, and seeing all the terrible things, your nervous system still registers these things as being danger, life threat, fight, flight, freeze responses. So that's why we have a responsibility to make sure that we are cautious of what it is that we are consuming. Third part is the social acceptance of suffering. Even though George Floyd was murdered and there was this big protest that took place, there's something in our culture where we believe that the violence that happens towards Black people is not as severe as the violence that happens towards other groups, specifically white people, but also for non-white people as well. Because I have clients that are Middle Eastern, I have LGBTQ clients, I have clients that are Asian, I have clients from all over the spectrum, because it just so happens that when you develop an approach that's designed to help the most marginalized, at the time I was thinking people affected by anti-Black racism, it ends up being able to help other people who are marginalized or attacked by the society in different types of ways as well. So the social acceptance of suffering means that because you're suffering and your society believes that your life does not matter as much as another person's, you have no choice but to make it so that the bad feeling in your stomach that comes up because of this mass shooting against Black people, or because of this terrible video against Black people, or because these terrible laws against Black people, you need to kind of make it so that for you to continue to operate in your society, that you cut yourself off and dissociate from these feelings. So there's three elements that we need to care about. There's a multi-generational legacy, there's the present day oppression, and the social acceptance of suffering. This means if we are able to help people to heal from racial trauma, we are not only healing their past, we are not only changing their present, but we are also making it better for their future.
That's a powerful share, and I don't know why I'm muting because I don't want to hear they couldn't
I
grasp
hear you. I
that.
could talk. Yo, you gave me a microphone. I could talk.
Yeah, but you can just whatever you want to share about. You can speak about your books you got. You can speak about what's next, but keep going.
Yeah,
Like
sure, sure,
I can
sure.
relate to like having suicide thoughts, and I used to drink. Like I was addicted to promethazine, marijuana, alcohol, but today I don't do anything. I'm sober, but I know how you can go through so much in life, and you can run to that and think that's the way out, but that's not the way out because after you sober up, that problem is still there.
You got it.
And that's something I had to tell myself. I was like, I'm coating myself with all this weed, all this alcohol. But soon when I sober up, whatever I just went through, it's still there. So I'm loving the story, man. You can whatever you want to share, Dave. You can Miss Arch, you can
I'm
keep
here.
going. Keep going. You
Okay,
got the floor.
fantastic. Is it okay if I share my screen and show you my books?
Then you can share anything you want to share. Like
Let's
this,
go.
go ahead. You got it.
Let's do this. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the books here, just to make it so that we understand what it is that I'm trying to do. So, because you mentioned before, or we were speaking a bit about ancient Kemet and the idea that we come from somewhere. I remember I gave a plenary speech for the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation in 2023. And I was, of course, the only Black man that was presenting there. But some of the only, because it is in Kentucky, and some of the only Black people that I saw were the people that were the staff. So I was like saying, like, what's up to these people? And everything was cool with them, right? And there's this one lady who was asking me like, oh, like, what are you doing down here? Because she could hear my accent, obviously, like this is not an accent from Kentucky. Okay, and so then I explained that, yeah, I'm giving this presentation about anti-racist psychotherapy and racial trauma. And she's like, really? And I said, she's like, how did you like do this? And I'm like, well, I'm an author of these books. And so then they read one of these books and they said, we like your theory, so can you come and talk in this place? And so that she said, it was interesting. She said that that's pretty cool. I like that you have books, but I don't really read. And that was an interesting thing. I did like explain to her that I understand why you're saying that because as a young person, I believed when I was younger that books weren't for me. I didn't find a lot of books that were trying to say something that was like relating to my experience. But it reminded me about how there's a belief that we don't read, even though we have these smartphone devices. And clearly, we're needing to read every time we're sending an email. Clearly, we're needing to read every time we're searching for something. This is maybe the most opportunities of us reading in our human history. But the deep level reading is something that we don't practice as much. And so we need to understand that even if we're not direct relatives to the ancient Egyptians, we at least share a similar culture with them. We're African, we're from that continent. And we need to understand that even these Egyptians, they were drawing hieroglyphs on the walls and all these things. They were writing on the walls and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So even when you see like graffiti writers, like just know that that's an ancestral thing. They're doing it for, you know what
Exactly.
I mean? Like it's just that we're so cut off from it that we feel like we can't even go in these directions, but there's always a link if you widen the scope of who it is. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I've written these books and I'll continue to write more because I feel that literacy is something that changed my life. And I'm hoping that there may be one word or even one sentence in one of these books that changes somebody else's life. So the first book is Anti-Racist Psychotherapy. This is a neurobiological explanation for racial trauma. It's for people to know that it's not just in your head, it's in your nervous system. And also, it's for people to get an introduction to what EMDR therapy is so that we know that you can target the accumulation of these traumatic experiences and you can live better lives. And that healing itself is revolutionary. That's how I look at it. Black meditation. I wrote this book because, as I said, not only because it's snowing outside right now, but let's just say there's a lot of white around here, and a lot of Black people don't feel as if there's any Black anything that's around here. So there are a lot of people who were like, how am I going to find an anti-racist therapist? How am I going to find a Black therapist? I was like, all right, cool. Let me write this book that is self-care techniques that even if you don't have a Black therapist around, that you can still speak you can still like it's an audiobook as well. The first two and the last book as well are audiobooks. So it's like guided meditations that are led by me, so that I'm explaining to a person how to practice the techniques that I do in the session, so that even if you don't have me in the room, then I can still be there with you. DeMarcus, you're gonna say something?
Yes, I love meditation. Then you said
Yeah, man.
guided meditation. I definitely got to check out that book. But by the way, I just want to say, like, man, all everything you doing, everything I heard so far, man, that's beautiful, man. I love to
Thank you.
see people use their story for somebody else's glory. Like what you went through, it did not stop you, and you just kept going. But keep like I love this, man. Like that's why I'm just listening. Like I'm like a
All
newborn,
right, cool.
like a newborn baby, but I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely gotta hear that black meditation. I gotta check into that. But no, keep
Right.
going, Mr. David. You got it. It's
All
your
right,
show.
cool. All right, cool. Yo, appreciate it. And again, if there are any questions that I need to clarify, you let me know, because I'm this is just how it is, right? So the third book is called Racial Trauma Recovery, and I wrote this book because in 2022 there was a mass shooting that happened in Buffalo, New York, and there was again a white supremacy insecure person who killed 10 Black people at the supermarket. There were white therapists who knew about my first book, and they asked me, they said, because this happened and there's more white therapists than Black therapists in the area, can you help to teach us a technique where we could help Black people and where we could even understand the stresses they're going through in a way that's not like trying to re-traumatize them and trying to be like, yo, as a white person, this is how it is. So then I wrote Racial Trauma Recovery and developed an approach called rhythm and processing, which is an Afrocentric principled approach that uses memory reconsolidation to help individuals and groups that are affected by crises like that. So racial trauma recovery is like a training manual, and it's also an explanation for how it is that I use my therapy, so that even if you're not in contact with me, you'll still understand, wait, okay, this is a logical way that we can heal from trauma permanently. So again, my approach is more about not like removing the mental health diagnosis, but making it so that the events that are kind of setting the foundation for the depression or setting the foundation for the anxiety disorder or the racial trauma, that we no longer need to have nightmares about it. We no longer need to have flashbacks about it, that we process it and finish with it, so that these events no longer we don't need to be so afraid of these parts of ourselves anymore. We can find ways of healing all aspects of ourselves. So the fourth book, Black Mountain, Fight for the Future.
I like that.
So I didn't mention this, but I'm a big fan. I was in computer science, so I was a big fan of like video games. And originally I wanted to make some video games.
Wow.
And then I realized video games, it's hard to make them. And I didn't have like the proper mentorship and all that stuff. So I ended up doing some database stuff, which was still helpful. But I always wanted to make a video game. And like I was a big fan of Japanese anime and stuff like that, because yeah, okay, cool. That's what's up. So
I'm a nerd. I'm a little low key nerd. I ain't ashamed.
What's your favorite anime?
Like it's so many. I used to watch like it's what's the Naruto? Is that considered? Yeah. That's like one of my favorites. I used to watch especially Dragon Ball Z. I used to watch that. And what's the other one? What's that? Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to love
Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So, but you see, this is it. Is that like, look, when I was in high school, look, I was in high school in the mid '90s. Okay, like I'm gonna be 40 at the end of this year, and back then, nobody, huh?
No, I said I ain't. Wow, you still young and doing your thing. Like I ain't number 38. Wow, you powerful. Like that's what's up.
Yeah, well, look, again, it's just there's the mission. This thing has to be done. So even if I need to sleep, no, I need to write. I need to sleep. No, we gotta do therapy.
Let's go. That's why I say I just put on Facebook. My goal is to publish 4 books this year. I already got.
There we go.
Like my first book is called From the Hood to the Church. It came out in 2019. Now then I got the ebook titled From the Hood to the Church, because that's
you got the cover. You got the
Huh?
cover of the book? Can you put the cover up?
I don't have it, but I
Oh,
got like
okay.
a physical copy of the book, so you
Okay.
how it look. It's just in the room. I don't know if I'm gonna run and go get it, but it's
Okay,
on
cool.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Then like I was like, you know what? I love writing because I'm expressing myself. And then I did I got two children's books titled "Dad, Where's My Fish?" That's on Barnes and Noble.
Cool. Cool.
Everything is on my website. I just got made. Then I got another children's book I did titled "Dead Diamond and the Baby Husky," and I dedicate this book to my sister Diamond because like we weren't close in the physical world, and she was poisoned by her girlfriend some years back. So she
Oh.
died from an allergic reaction. So I was like, I'm gonna
Oh,
dedicate
wow.
this book to her. Yeah. So I was like, I wrote the book. It's a children's book. Great story. Then I got my fit book that I'm finna get published. Gonna be on Amazon. It's titled "From the Hood to the Church Part 2: Why I Chose Spirituality Over Religion." So I'm bringing people on my
Yeah.
journey. Then my sixth book that I'm finna get put in audio format, which is getting worked on now, is a podcast book.
Mm-hmm.
Teach people how to start a podcast with
Yeah.
not that much money. Like you don't need a lot of money to start on podcast, but I enjoy writing books too. It's like it's a way to express myself, and it's like a form
Exactly.
of art. But now keep going.
Exactly.
You can finish sharing your with your own wonderful books, man. Because I'm definitely gonna check out that meditation because I love meditations. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love meditation around water, and I especially love guided meditation. Like if you really silence your thoughts and listen to meditation, you can actually see yourself. I actually be seeing myself like
Yes.
in going through the meditations, like you
I
there,
know.
but you. So I love meditations. Keep going, Mr. David, man. This has been such an
Yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
this
Thank you. Thank you.
conversation, man.
But just to add to what you're saying is that like there's a purpose behind why it is that you are writing. And it's like, and we mentioned like some commonalities, that there were times where we were reluctant to share our voice. And like I do want to say as well is that I am an introvert, so I'm not a person who wants to talk to a hundred different people.
Me
But it's just
too.
that, but it's just the purpose is so important. It's just that's what overrides my shyness, is that no, we got to correct this problem and we got to do everything that we can. So that's why I do the things that I'm doing. The fourth book, Black Mountain Fight for the Future, is because I am the father of a 2.5-year-old at this moment. And uh,
Mhm.
like the thing is, it's going to be a little bit of time before he's ready to read my manuscripts about anti-racist psychotherapy and the effects of the amygdala and all these things. So I wrote this book, and that book is there's two young people. They go through a walking ancestor ritual where they are able to harness the powers of the elements of the planet so that they can use them to defeat the AI generated robots that are run by the intergalactic fascist government that's trying to destroy their planet and the other planets.
I
And
like
so
that.
it's a mix of martial arts, because you're talking about Naruto. It's a mix of uh like one of my animes that I liked was Neon Genesis Evangelion. That was one of my favorites. And
I've
also,
never
like, of
heard of
course,
that.
there's a whole lot. Parasite, Paranoia Agent. Like I like a lot of obscure stuff, a lot of obscure stuff. So for me, and Death Note, and you might know Death Note, but
I
anyways,
heard of that too.
it's all of that just to say we need to not only just speak to just the academics or the scientists, we need to speak to the general public. So that's why I wrote that book,
Mhm.
to make it so that there's a way that even if you're not so into the scientific thing, this might be your entry point. And all of these are entry points into people just thinking differently. Then the fifth book, Transforming Complex Trauma, is that I started, as I said, as that like I wanted people to know that there's an explanation for why they have certain types of symptoms, even if they don't have the mental health like diagnosis. And the accumulation of
Mhm.
racial microaggressions at your work, the accumulation of being denied like bonuses or denied promotions because of how your hair looks, because of your skin color, and all these things. Sometimes that does lead to increased trauma symptoms. And so then that book is a simplified explanation of what my approach is and why we need to revolutionize our mental health. So these are the 5 books. And as you're just saying, you can get these books at Barnes and Nobles. You can get them from Amazon. You can get them from most major bookstores. And even in the places where you don't see them, ask the librarian or ask the receptionist, say that David Archer's written this book, and they'll gladly bring that book in. I'm trying to find
Mhm.
out how we can make it. Not because I don't want to support Amazon and the billionaires, that the billionaire class, but it's
Right.
just I want to make it so that even Black bookstores, that people will go to them. So if there's any Black bookstore or people that are listening to this who own Black bookstores, um, we want to make it so that we let we put our money into those like small businesses so that we can kind of encourage our own people. We got to make it so
Mhm.
that this idea that we're not readers, I just don't buy that we're not readers. It's just that there's some people who haven't had the book speak to them yet. So that's why I'm going to
Right.
keep writing, because there's a chance that in the same way that my reading The Destruction of Black Civilization, there's a chance that my reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, that this inspired a fire in me. There's a chance that one of my books
Mhm.
also does the same to somebody else.
No, that's powerful, man. Like I'm glad you shared that, and I can relate to like your last book you were saying about complex drama. How trauma? I said complex drama. I mean complex trauma because
It feels like a drama, but yes, yes.
because I can relate to like going or being judged over a job because not getting hired because of my hair, or like I got a tattoo of a butterfly on my face, and people they look at me like, "Why I got the butterfly?" But my wife, my beautiful wife, I love to death. She had butterfly lupus, so that represented her.
Okay.
So that's why I got that butterfly. But I didn't. I remember I didn't went on several job interviews like a couple months ago. I don't know how long ago, and for a whole month I went on like maybe 7, 8, 9 interviews, and nobody hired me. Like I came in there dressed properly, hair done, like shaved, clean cut, and I'm wondering why they didn't hire me or they picked this person over me. Because then I had to sit back and think they looking at my image, how I look, but they not really trying to get to know me as a person. So it kind of had me upset. I was depressed and stressed out for a little bit, but thanks to my wife, man, she stuck with me, man, encouraged me. Like instead of just doing applications on Indeed and talking on the phone, and just go to a job and just walk in there and let them know who you are. And I did that, and I got hired. So I can actually relate to everything, all the books you shared. I can actually relate to that. So I know it's the top
Congratulations.
of the hour, man. I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. So say like if somebody want to reach out to you, or they like they like what you share and they want to order your books, or they want to put you down or have a therapy section with you just because they dealing with probably racism, or they dealing with some complex trauma, or they just dealing with life and they need somebody to talk to that's authentic. How can the people reach out to you? How can they reach you, Mr. David?
Yeah, so my website is archertherapy.com. And, the thing is that because you have an international audience, there may be limits for who I can provide therapy for, because we
Mm.
also want you to know that there are probably some other amazing therapists that are in your state. So
Mm.
there are ways of being able to find those therapists. But Google can be the best friend that you have in that situation. But if people are looking for like, because I give like presentations for corporations, I give presentations for organizations, I train therapists, I provide like consultation when therapists have difficulties with their specific cases. But the main thing is that even if those things don't necessarily are
And you
not
said
the avenue,
you
then
said
the book.
archertherapy.com. So like
Yeah,
ARCHER therapy.com.
you got it. Archer Therapy. That's it. Yeah. So if you go on that website, you're going to find everything that you need to know about me. Um, again, is that the website explains the books, it explains the model. There's also links to my Instagram. Anybody who, even if you're not looking for therapy, add me on Instagram, add me on social media, because it kind of increases the reach of this message. And if anything in this like really resonated with you, then I hope that you're able to experience some form of compassion and understand that compassion is the gift that keeps on giving. So even if you cannot necessarily afford therapy, even if you can't necessarily become a therapist, we need to make it so that healing is a part of our human experience. So even you being able to make life a little bit easier for somebody else can be a therapeutic action. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always need to be that we are creating drastic changes in order to cause a revolution in our lives. It just needs to be that our mindset is away from this like solitary individualism and understanding that there's a greater collectivity that's there. You know, you spoke about the passing of your sister. Um, that is what you said, right?
Yes, sir.
And yeah, so it's
Yes,
just
sir.
that for me, um, a few months ago, there was the passing of my godmother, Auntie Helen. And she is one of the purest people I've ever met. She's a person that
Mm-hmm.
always like would help me to be able to feel good about myself anytime I was going through something. So for those in your audience that also might have lost somebody who they care about, remember the understanding as well is that it's the physical relationship might have ended, but it started a spiritual relationship. Even if someone is not existing in the physical realm where you can touch them, remember that your memory of them still allows your nervous system to bring that smile to your face. So that's why you spoke earlier about how some of our ancestors jumped off the ships. Dr. Daniel Black had a book where he was speaking a bit about how in some cultures, even though people jumped off of the ships, it's not because they committed suicide. It's that they knew that they could help the people that survived through the ancestral realm instead of the physical realm. All right.
I like that because I always say like my sister Diamond, even though like when she was her physical, we didn't have the best of terms, but I know she helped me and she loved me in the spiritual world because it's like I look at everything like synchronism.
Yes.
When I be riding somewhere like on my way to Montreal, Canada, I seen a hotel called Diamond Inn. I must be
Yes.
on
Yes.
whatever you say.
yes.
Then like right where I stayed in San Antonio, Texas, like up the street, it's a street say Diamond something. But so that's how I know my aunt. She's in the presence of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that when we heal from our suffering and when we try as best as we can to live a life that's in accordance with these synchronicities, we tune into our intuition. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people doubt their intuition because, like, you know, it could be like a gut feeling. But then because we've been traumatized, sometimes the bad feeling in our stomach is misinterpreted as the gut feeling. So we cut ourselves off to the spiritual like gifts that we all have. And you said that you were a fan of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Just real quick, I wanted to just explain is that
Go
part
ahead.
of the inspirations for me writing Black meditation was I did this thing called a Vipassana meditation retreat. So it was like 10 days in this mountain, and
Oh,
it's like no cell phones, no meat, no eye contact with any of the other people. Men and women were separate. No speech. You know, only talking for like maybe about like 10 minutes a day to the instructor. And I do have to say that while I don't recommend this to anybody because this is hard, this is not they call it a meditation retreat, but that felt like an attack on my consciousness by all of my internal demons, all at the same time with no weapons, no shield, all the demons attacking me. So, but I felt at that moment, I learned how there is like a depth that is within each and every one of us. I learned that there's a way that we can use the body to heal the mind. And I learned also that um, life is not as simple. It's not like I feel that life is a very valuable thing. It's a very complex thing. The synchronicities, especially when you sit in silence, they become a little bit clearer. And so I want to
Mhm.
just let people know that there are multiple ways of healing that are there. And as I said at the presentation, the final message is you are Black because you are beautiful. You are beautiful because you are Black. For anybody listening to this, questioning their purpose or their reason for being here, remember that there was an unknown ancestor that we may share that did everything that they could to make it so that you have taken this breath and the next breath that will follow as well. So we have an obligation to honor the sacrifices of those who we will never meet, and to make it so that in the same way that they helped us in our past, we may be able to help somebody in the future.
I love it, man. Like I said, thank you once again for coming on Seeking Out This podcast, sharing your story, man, sharing your amazing journey, man. I really appreciate you, man. Like, you a good brother, man. When I met you, I just knew you was amazing. So
Thank
thank
you.
you once again. I mean,
Likewise.
appreciate it, but I know you gotta go. But I really enjoyed this. Like, I really enjoyed this. I'm gonna send you this so you can share it on your platforms. I share it on my platforms because somebody need to hear this. And thank you once again. And you enjoy the rest of your day, Mr. Archer.
Yeah. So many blessings. Yeah, I'm on diaper duty. I gotta help my son with the potty training. So many
Nah, it's
blessings to
all
you.
good.
Yeah, man. All right. So many blessings. Take care, everyone. Peace.